Hello, everyone, and welcome to our free January 2023 webinar, in which I will be talking about the 3 must-dos for every bookkeeper before taking on a cleanup. And as you're joining me, let me know in the chat where you're joining me from. I always, as you know, if you joined me before, I love to know where you're joining from because we have usually people from all over the world, and I'm always amazed that you're joining me from far away, and I love to be able to connect with you and know that there are people listening. I think that's the biggest fear when you do something live like this, is somebody going to show up. But I see in the chat that we have lots and lots of you joining us. And let me go to the top here. So Kayla from Orlando, Florida, and I'll just skip around because I know there's many of you here. We have Lawrence from Canada, Natalie from Chicago, Samantha from Phoenix, Christine from Nevada, Tom from Phoenix, Oscar from Los Angeles, California, Terry from Northern Indiana. And by the way, I don't know if you can hear that we have some storms happening at the moment. So hopefully the electricity and internet will cooperate with us, but if not, we'll do the best that we can. But I think there's thunder in the background. So we have Adeline from the Philippines, Bernadette from right here in my backyard, Houston, Texas, Kit from Oregon, Kimberly from rainy Fort Worth. It's raining in Fort Worth too, isn't it? Starlene from Maricopa, Arizona, Lisa from Long Island, New York. Um, let's see, Anna. Hello, Anna. She loves thunder, she says. Carol from Heartland, Wisconsin. Kelsey, another person from Texas, Kingwood, also semi in my backyard, probably about an hour away. Welcome. And Linda says it's snowing in Oklahoma. It's probably cold enough that we're getting the rain because it's not cold enough here, and they're getting the snow in Oklahoma. And Lauren says they're supposed to get looks like a Texas low snowstorm on Wednesday and Thursday. So hopefully we won't get that snow here. so so as I said, if you're just joining me, there are some thunderstorms passing through. You might hear thunder. Hopefully the electricity and internet will hold out. If for any reason we get disconnected, I'll try to get back on, but we'll do the best we can. If worst case scenario, if I can't reconnect, I'll do another webinar, but we will do the best that we can with the weather that we have. As it is, I'm at home because the electricity was turned off in our office building. We don't know. I think it's probably the storms. So thanks is from Bay Area, California. No snow there. And yeah, Dina says she hopes the weather cooperates with us. So we'll see. Hello, Pat. So again, welcome to our free January webinar, the 3 must-dos for every bookkeeper before taking on a cleanup. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I believe you should be seeing my screen. There we go. And let me get some things in front of me so I can present for you guys. Okay, so if this is the first time that you're joining and you might be wondering who I am, my name is Veronica Wasek. I am the CEO and founder of VM Wasek. We provide bookkeeping and consulting for Shopify sellers. I'm the creator of the 5-Minute Bookkeeping YouTube channel and blog, as well as the founder of the Facebook group 5-Minute Bookkeeping Community. And I'm also the founder of the 5MB Academy for Virtual Bookkeepers, and I will be telling you more about that a little bit later. I am a top 10 as well as a top 100 QuickBooks Pro advisor, a certified public accountant here in the US, and also certified advanced QuickBooks Online Pro advisor. I live in Sugar Land, Texas, near Houston. And then you can follow me on Instagram at 5 Minute Bookkeeping. My husband and I are very, very blessed and fortunate to have a beautiful 90-acre farm that hopefully we will be moving to in a couple of years. So we do live in Sugarland. Our farm is in Hallettsville, Texas, and it is absolutely gorgeous. We spend our Fridays and Saturdays there every single week if we can. And just we have beautiful sunsets, kind of rolling hills. We have 100-year-old camp house, just absolutely gorgeous. Some administrative announcements. All content handouts, recordings, and everything that I will present are under copyright, and you may not record this webinar. We do have handouts for you. I have shared the links to the handouts for you within the webinar. If for some reason you can't find it, my partner in crime, Jesse Harris, who will be monitoring the chat, is sharing that link with you. And if you can also get the link to the handout when we send out the recording for the webinar. If you do need to leave early, as I said, we will send the recording to everyone who registered, as well as a link to the handout. In terms of the chat, you're welcome to use the chat to talk amongst yourselves. But if you have any questions, please put them in the questions tab. I will be monitoring the questions. Jesse Harris will be monitoring the chat. And as I said, we will mail you the recording and the link to the handout. So let me just make sure that everything is good before I start. Yep, Jesse already shared the link with you. And I'm going to switch over to the Q&A. And I'll be answering your questions later. So as I'm presenting, as I'm going through this content, if you have any questions, just put them in the Q&A, and then I will answer all of your questions towards the end. So we'll start first of all with what is a cleanup, because there's a lot of misconceptions about really what does it entail to do a cleanup of your client's books. And I don't know about you, but whenever you're talking to a prospective client, at least when I am, and the clients tell you that, oh, I just need my books reconciled, clean up my chart of accounts. It'll take you a couple of hours. So what does the client think you're doing when you're doing a cleanup? It's like this lovely little walk and jog in the park. It's a beautiful sunny day, and we're just gonna clean up a little thing here and there. And what is a cleanup really like? When it's muddy, it's messy, you're sweaty, it's stinky. Cleanups are really they can be really bad. And my team and I have done hundreds of cleanups. I lost count. I mean, it could be 1,000 plus cleanups by now, but I will say it's been hundreds of cleanups, and they are messy, and you do get dirty. And really, as bookkeepers, we will come across cleanup situations. There's no way to avoid them. So what is a cleanup? A cleanup is when we take our clients' messy and incomplete books, and we're going to then review them, catch them up, fix the books, do the bank reconciliations, do several things to get those books cleaned up, with the goal of having complete, accurate, what I call tax-ready books. And not only that, we're going to clean up the books at a transactional level. The reason we clean them up at a transactional level is because QuickBooks Online is designed to work at a transactional level. When I was an accountant working for other accounting firms, we were always taught that you do journal entries, and we did lots and lots of journal entries to attempt to clean up our clients' books. But ultimately, it just caused more problems because we really didn't know how to work in QuickBooks. So to truly be successful at doing cleanups and cleaning up your clients' books, you need to know how to clean up their books at a transactional level. But there are a lot of challenges when doing cleanup work. we're not getting paid to diagnose the books ahead of time. We have no idea what's wrong with the books. We have no idea how to price a cleanup. We price by the hour, and then the client gets sticker shock when they get your invoice. And this happened to me early on that, oh, I can't invoice that. I'm okay. um, it says 5,000, but I can't. No, I'll just charge 1,000. And we're scared to charge the client what it really took. And in many cases, the client doesn't even want to pay you because they just think like, how could it take that much? I thought it was just, a little bit of cleanup here and there. You don't have an agreement with the client on a desired outcome many times, and then the client tries to control the process because, as I said before, they just think that you're just doing a few little things here and there. So how does that affect us as professionals, as business owners, as bookkeepers who, we want to succeed, but now we're dealing with insecurity, low prices. We take on an employee mentality of, well, the client says they want me to only do this, when you know that, okay, they want you to do this, but you need this much. And you get stuck in a cycle of working with bad clients. So what I'm going to show you today then is the three must do's that you as a bookkeeper need to do. And actually, I skipped. There we go. The three must do's for every bookkeeper, and in order to take on a cleanup project. It is number one, review. Number two, report. And number three, recommend. And we're going to go back to this other slide, that in order to go from these negative emotions that we get as a result of not having clarity into a client's cleanup project, we have to then change our mindset, and we have to work toward changing that mindset. And one of the things that I started to say to myself is, number one, I'm a professional. So I'm not that client's employee. They are hiring me as a professional, as a fellow business owner, to clean up their books. The second one, I deserve to be compensated for my expertise, for my time, and for my effort. And we deserve to be compensated. Number three, what I do is no different from what a doctor does. Because when you go to a doctor, the doctor examines you, they diagnose you, and then they prescribe a treatment. And notice how when you go to a doctor, you're not telling the doctor how they need to treat you, how they need to examine you, or that, well, you know what, doctor, I only want you to do this test because I don't want you to do these other tests. You don't get a say in the matter. The doctor is the professional. The doctor is the one who brings the expertise and who's going to then know how to examine you, how to diagnose you, and how to prescribe a treatment. So again, the three must-dos are review, report, and recommend. And we will start with step one. We will go over a review. So what does that entail? First of all, we need to get paid to diagnose our clients' books, just as a doctor gets paid to examine and diagnose you when you go to that doctor. And we do that by performing a paid diagnostic review. The goal of the diagnostic review is to get a full scope of work before you clean up or catch up the books. So it's the same again as the doctor. They examine and diagnose you before they treat you. Just imagine going to a doctor and they jump right into a surgery. They don't even know what's wrong with you. So we have to take that same mindset of, we need to diagnose the books, and we need to get charged to do, we need to get paid rather to do that before we do the cleanup. So what is the diagnostic review? It is a paid project. You assess the health of your client's QuickBooks Online data. You diagnose problems and assess the level of cleanup needed. You identify transactions that need to be brought up to date, and you get a clear scope of work. What is the value of doing a paid diagnostic review? There are many benefits to doing this. You will learn to know what the client is like to work with. Because sometimes, we take on these clients that are really difficult, and we don't have a chance to really just take them on for a short project. So just doing the diagnostic review, you'll get to know what the client is like to work with, and they'll actually get to know what it's like to work with you. You get a better scope of work, and therefore you will be reducing surprises. You'll give the client a recommendation of services, which places you in that advisory role, or the same role that your doctor takes. They will recommend a treatment. It puts you in control. So now the client isn't telling you what needs to be done. You're the one who is diagnosing the books and then telling the client what's wrong. And it lowers the risk to the client, because now they see that, okay, the first step is to know what's wrong with your books. The second step is the cleanup or other things. And I'll go over that in more detail shortly. And they're not making that a big investment when they're working initially with you on the paid diagnostic review. In this way, again, it's a smaller engagement. They'll get to know exactly what's wrong with their books because you're going to tell them, and then you can continue to add on other services, and I'll talk more about that. So why should you charge for the diagnostic review? I don't know if you have seen a reel that I did recently that I was talking about why I started charging for a paid diagnostic review. And it's because I kept doing all of these diagnostic reviews for free. I was spending hours reviewing my prospective clients' books. I would tell them exactly what was wrong with their books, and I would meet with them and show them, here's what's wrong, only to find out that they weren't interested. And so I realized that there was some disconnect of, I can't put in this many hours and do all of this for free, only to find out that this isn't the right client, that they don't value what I'm doing. So you're going to charge for a diagnostic review to qualify your prospect, to know that they're willing and able to pay for your services. Because if they're not willing and able to pay for a diagnostic review, they're not going to pay for a cleanup. And then that prospect, by being willing to pay for your services, is really also saying that they value working with a specialist or with an expert. By charging for the diagnostic review, you're demonstrating that you are a specialist. It compensates you for the time invested in diagnosing the books. And as I said before, you deserve to be compensated for your time, for your effort, and your expertise. So how do you charge for this diagnostic review? You have a couple of options, and I try to make it as simple as possible. I'm not trying to get rich from the diagnostic reviews, and so I price them very quickly. I price them during the initial discovery call with the client. I tell them exactly how much is going to be. And so I just keep it very, very simple. So you have a couple of options. Option one can be based on your client's annual revenues. So for example, up to 500,000 in annual revenues, then you can charge $300 to $500. Give me a second to get my mouse to point here. Okay, here we go. So up to 500,000 in revenue, $300 to $500. 500 to $1 million in revenue, 500 to 750, and over $1 million in revenue, $950. Your second option can be based on the number of months that you're reviewing. So up to 5 months, $500, up to 9 months, $700, up to 12 months, $900. Now, I know some of you may be saying like, wow, you're not charging enough. Well, others of you are probably saying like, wow, I could never charge that much. And so charge what you're comfortable charging. But if you feel like these numbers are too high, I'm going to challenge you to just on the next client tell them it's going to be $500 for the paid diagnostic review, because you'd be surprised to see that they will go for it. And many of my students were intimidated and thinking that, oh, well, yeah, I couldn't charge that much. And then realizing that after they implemented what I teach, that the right client, if they're willing and able to pay for your services, will pay for the diagnostic review. And it's really about practicing. Just to when you're talking to a prospective client about pricing, it's always, number one, very important to really take away emotion. Your emotions around pricing are not what your client, or at least what an ideal client, feels about pricing. They may not be price sensitive. You may be price sensitive. So don't project your emotions toward your prospective client. And so we want to remove emotions, and then we just want to be very, very matter of fact when we talk to a client about price. And the way that I normally talk about pricing or have that money conversation is very simple. I just say the pricing for the paid diagnostic review is $500. So I want you to practice just saying it. The pricing for the paid diagnostic review is $500, or the pricing for the paid diagnostic review is $900. So it's just a matter of practicing and getting used to saying that out loud, and really letting go of any of your emotions around money. Okay, hold on one second. My PowerPoint is not changing. Okay, I'm gonna have to look at it from the screen that I'm sharing. For whatever reason, it's not changing on the screen that I'm looking at. So how do we offer the diagnostic review to a prospective client? So when you're talking to that prospective client, most of the time they're going to then share with you what their pain points are. Give me 1 second just to check and make sure that we are doing good. Everybody can see. Okay, perfect. So I'm just having problems on my end, but we'll make it work. Okay, so how do we sell this diagnostic review? When you're talking to that prospective client, as I said, most of the time they're going to share their pain points with you. And I used to not listen to them because I heard them 1,000 times, but that's where the money is, guys. You have to listen, need to pay attention. I even take notes. They'll start with, my books are messed up. I tried to do my own books and I messed them up, or I hired a bookkeeper who messed up my books, or my CPA won't work with QuickBooks Online, or my CPA doesn't work in my niche. There's many things that they will list and tell you about what's wrong with their books. And so in that, after we listen to the things that they say, we will then say, here's what I recommend. Okay, there's probably going to be some talking back and forth, but at the end of your acknowledging what they say, you're going to ask questions. When you're ready to then present that the paid diagnostic review to them, or to offer the paid diagnostic review to them, you're going to say, here is what I recommend. This is the magic phrase. Here is what I recommend. So I want you to practice at home saying, here's what I recommend. So this is what you're going to say. I recommend doing a paid diagnostic review of your books so that I can get a clear picture of what's wrong with your books. At the end of my review, I will go over my findings with you, and I will also give you upfront pricing for my services. So this is really important for you to memorize this, even have a little script written out so that you can just say it again. Take away the emotion. You're making a recommendation as a professional to your prospective client. And this is in your handout. So you have this in your handout. So what are the results of having offered the paid diagnostic review, and of, let's say that the client agrees to pay you for the diagnostic review. So you have pre-qualified your prospective client. They show that they value your proposed services. They demonstrate that they're willing and able to pay for your services, and they show that they're willing to let you control the process. So this was the game changer for me, because it wasn't just about getting paid for my time to diagnose the books. It was a complete change in the relationship that I now had with my clients, and then being able to work with clients who were invested in the process, who were willing and able to pay, and who were willing to let me control the process. So what are some of the workflow basics of doing a pay diagnostic review? And in case you know me, if you don't know me, I love workflows. I love breaking everything down into steps. The first step, we're going to perform the diagnostic review. And this is assuming that the client has paid us in advance to do the pay diagnostic review. So then we're going to perform that diagnostic review. We're going to prepare our findings and recommendations. Then we'll determine the services recommended. We'll price those services. We'll present our findings and recommendations to the client, and then we will offer additional services. How do we do this diagnostic review? First of all, we need to get information from our client to be able to do it. We'll need accountants' access to their QuickBooks Online. We'll need their business bank and credit card statements for the periods that we're reviewing. And we'll need a copy of their last corporate tax return in the US. That would be for S Corps, C Corps, and partnerships. And we need a checklist. We need to be able to have a way to comprehensively go through the client's books, and hit all of the major areas. This is the way that now we can know what is wrong with their books. Now, will we find everything that's wrong with their books? No. But if you get really good at this, I would say probably you'll find 90% of it, because there's still some surprises there that maybe you don't know about. But we've done enough of these diagnostic reviews to really have a very high degree of accuracy in terms of the types of problems that we're finding. So in your checklist and in the things that you need to be reviewing, if you have, again, in the US, a S Corp, C Corp, or partnership, you need to ensure that their balance sheet, it reconciles to the last tax return. You're going to look at, sorry, not yet. We're going to look at the bank accounts, and bank and credit card accounts, make sure they were reconciled, make sure there are no unclear transactions. And I will show you that here in a moment. We'll go over undeposited funds. There's usually lots of old transactions in undeposited funds. We'll review all of the accounts on the profit and loss, all of the accounts on the balance sheet. We'll review their accounts receivable and accounts payable agings. We'll review their chart of accounts, the products and services list, review payroll, inventory and sales taxes if they're using QuickBooks to manage all of those areas, and then anything else that's pertinent to their specific industry. Here's an example of, this is an excerpt of my checklist that I used to review their bank and credit card accounts. So we'll list the bank and credit card accounts. We'll make a note of the last date that the accounts were reconciled. We'll check for old and cleared transactions. In case you don't know it, when you have old and cleared transactions in your bank account, the bank account balance isn't accurate. And so a lot of times you'll see clients that have, it could be dozens or sometimes even hundreds of old unclear transactions because they duplicated amounts. We'll also check for any auto adjustments in the bank reconciliations. We'll make sure that their accounts are connected to the bank feeds. Sometimes they're not. we'll check for old transactions in the bank feeds window. Perhaps they haven't gone through all of the bank feeds yet. And then we'll make a note of the findings and recommendations. And this is what will go on the client's report. So after reviewing this, and for example, we have statewide bank, we're reviewing from January 1 of 2021 through December 31, 2021. This slide is a little bit older. You can just imagine now it's 2022. Okay, we're reviewing for the year 2022, for example. And for statewide bank, the last day that it was reconciled, it was in September. They had a 131 items outstanding or uncleared in their bank reconciliation. And then their reconciliation opening balance has a difference of $38,000. And then they have old transactions in the bank feeds. So we're going to then make a notation of all of that in our findings and recommendations. And then we'll write it out in a way that then we can copy and paste onto a report for the client. So in this case, we're saying that they need to prepare the bank we need to prepare the bank reconciliations from October through December, review and clean up old uncleared items in the bank reconciliations, adjust the reconciliation opening balance for statewide bank, and then add and match transactions in the bank feeds. And so as I said, this goes in the client's report, and then you can have, you can have a section for work to be completed, which can be your internal notes for anything internally that perhaps you need to know about for when you do the cleanup. And you'll notice, and I put an arrow here, if you track or estimate how many hours it'll take to clean up something, then you can put that in your notes. All right, so how do we know how do we diagnose some of these things? We have a checklist, but where do we look for these things? So here's an example. When you're doing a bank reconciliation in QuickBooks, and you'll see that the beginning balance is off because it'll have this exclamation point. And then it'll also tell you your account isn't ready to reconcile yet. And it tells you the amount of the difference. So that's what we picked up on our checklist. Here's an example also. First of all, we know when they last reconciled because we see that in QuickBooks. But when you look at the bank reconciliation in QuickBooks and you scroll down to the area where it says unclear checks and payments, then you'll see that this client has lots and lots of uncleared transactions, which, as I said, that's a problem, and it makes the bank balance in QuickBooks to be inaccurate. Here's another example of the checklist, an excerpt for reviewing the income section of the profit and loss. And so we have several questions that we go through about negative and unusual balances, uncategorized income, for any customer, or rather for any clients who invoice their customers, whether there's deposits recorded as income, because usually that's a sign that they have an incorrect workflow when posting customer payments. Perhaps recording loan proceeds as income is another problem. Sometimes sales tax paid is recorded as a deduction to income. So it could be any number of things. And then we'll make a note of our findings, whether there's cleanup needed or it's okay. We'll put in our comments, and we'll actually even make a notation of the number of transactions that we saw that have a problem, the date range, and the dollar amount of those transactions. This is all for the goal of then when we share this with the client, we share our findings with the client, we will be very, very specific about what's wrong with their books, so that instead of them thinking that we're just reconciling, they can really see that you know exactly what's wrong with their books, and here's the dollar amount. So for example, where I said that they're recording income as deposits for a client that should be invoicing their customers, you could have duplicated income of $210,000. All right. So how do we check for some of these things? When you look at the profit and loss, we see that they have income categories, but then they have this service income that is miscategorized. They have uncategorized income as well. And then they have negative balances in their job materials income account. And here's uncategorized income. So if we go back to the profit and loss, we have uncategorized income on the profit and loss. So when we drill down, then we can see that the exact transactions that are in uncategorized income that, we shouldn't have uncategorized income. All income should be categorized. And then here's the example of a business that invoices customers. So when we look at the profit and loss for the income accounts, we should only be seeing invoices, but now we see that they're recording deposits instead of entering customer payments. So they more than likely also have a problem with undeposited funds. So you might be asking yourself, how do I know all of these things? It's just learning QuickBooks Online inside and out, understanding the workflows, understanding the undeposited funds workflow, and just doing hundreds of cleanups. But so that you don't have to learn all of this on your own, I have a YouTube playlist that takes you step by step on a lot of these accounts on how to review and diagnose the accounts. So here's the link for you, and Jesse should be sharing that link with you as well. So we said step one was to review by way of the paid diagnostic review. Step two is report. We're going to present our findings and recommendations to our client. Just to remind you, you're acting as an advisor, you're showing your client what you found, and you're giving them an expert recommendation of what needs to be cleaned up. So we established that there's value in that and that we should be charging for it. But as we're performing this project, this paid diagnostic review, just remember that there's value in it for you in terms of you now positioning yourself as an advisor and as an expert or a specialist when taking on your client's cleanup. So it's moving you away from that employee mentality or from the client trying to treat you as an employee, and it's moving you toward you being more confident and being treated with respect and being paid accordingly, because now they're not seeing you as an employee, they're seeing you as someone who really has their stuff together. What is the value of the report of findings and recommendations in addition to what I just said? It's a professional report. As I said, it positions you as a professional. It helps to communicate your value. And again, you got your, it's really showing you have your stuff together. When we go over the report of findings with the client, and when I do it, it's a Zoom meeting. I go over the report with the client. I will show you what that report looks like. I show them the problems in QuickBooks as well. So I will show, here's the report, here's what we found, and then I'll go to their QuickBooks and I will show it to them. When I finish going over that report, I will give pricing to the client to clean up and catch up the books. And the meeting takes 45 minutes to an hour to do all of what I just described. Here's an example of a cover sheet for your report of findings and recommendations. It has the client's name. This is just a name I made up. It'll say QuickBooks Diagnostic Review, report of findings and recommendations, and prepared by, and then you would put your logo there. And then you're going to, in your report, give them your findings. In this particular case, just because it's easier, we do a screenshot of what we checked for the bank and credit card accounts, and then we list the recommendations and we bullet those recommendations. For the profit and loss review, we'll have a page specifically for that. We'll tell them the purpose, like why is it important to review these accounts. And then we'll list all of our findings based on the checklist that I showed you earlier. Then we'll list those findings one by one. And notice how then I include the number of transactions and dollar amounts. And as I said, I'm showing them the report, and then I go to a separate window and I show them, and here's where it is in QuickBooks. And this is all part of them now realizing that they have a much bigger problem than they thought. And that clearly you know what's wrong with the books and you can fix it because you're showing them. All right, so step number 1 was review. Step number 2, report. Step number 3 is recommend. And we're going to offer additional services. So when you present that report of findings and recommendations to your client, at the end, you're going to recommend additional services. So notice that I'm not saying sell them something. Definitely do not sell them anything that they don't need. And we need to really stop thinking about selling because we're recommending. And again, if you go back to a doctor, the doctor isn't worried about like, oh no, will they have the procedure or not have the procedure? They're diagnosing, and they are determining what's wrong, and then they're prescribing a treatment. And so again, it's the same thing. So we're going to recommend additional services. And clearly, if it's for cleanup, we're going to then recommend cleaning up their books, catching up the books, monthly bookkeeping, perhaps coaching and training. If they think that they're going to do their own books after you clean them up, you can offer them coaching and training. We have many clients who want to go from a cleanup to coaching and training to they think they can do their own books, and it's really about empowerment for them. They want to feel empowered over their financials. We've had several clients that we go from cleanup to coaching them, and to then within 3 months they realize that they don't want to do their own books, and then they have us do the books. And there may be consulting also. If they have workflows that they're not doing correctly, or maybe there's an opportunity to integrate QuickBooks with apps that will streamline their workflows, then certainly you could offer some consulting as well. So when you offer those additional services, here's what you need to say. I recommend cleaning it, and this is for cleanup and catch up. I recommend cleaning up and catching up your books from January to December 2022, as I mentioned in my report of findings. The pricing for this service is, and then you're going to give them either a flat price or a price range. And I'll talk about pricing cleanups here shortly. So again, it's all about just remove the emotion, and then you're going to tell them what you recommend. Obviously, if you're cleaning up a different period, that you would then obviously give them a different date. But the idea is I recommend, and you insert the service. Okay, I recommend doing the service for this time frame. The pricing for this service is, so let's say that the pricing for this service is $5,000 to $6,000, or the pricing for the service is $7,500. So the pricing for this service is 50,000. Whatever it is, you need to get used to saying this out loud, saying these kind of scary big numbers, because I know it was hard for me to say that, because we don't go around talking about like, oh yeah, that's 50,000 or that's 20,000, but we have to get used to saying these amounts and removing the emotion, because again, at least for me, I realized that I was projecting my emotions about money onto a client who was maybe not sensitive about money. And also remind them after you give them this that by cleaning up your box, then you will have confidence in your financials. You'll save time. So what all the benefits that that all the negatives that they shared with you about what was wrong with their books initially, now you need to turn them into positives in order to then remind them that, remember, you told me that you're staying up at night worried about your books, or that you maybe overpaying your income taxes. So by cleaning up and catching up your books will address all of those issues so that you can focus on running your business and have that peace of mind knowing that you don't have to worry about the books anymore. Stay away from talking about accurate and timely financials because they're more concerned about how they feel after you've cleaned up the books. Now, because I talked about pricing the cleanup, I wanted to just spend a little bit of time on how much you should charge for a cleanup because I know you're probably all wondering that. And remember that now you position this client in the sense that first they agreed to pay you for a paid diagnostic review. You have now shown them everything that is wrong with their books and what needs to be done to get them up to date and cleaned up. And that now, as I said, you just need to share with them and recommend what the next service is and what the pricing is. So how do you go about cleaning, or rather, how do you go about pricing that cleanup? First of all, you need to understand your value. Your ability to clean up their books is of value. You're alleviating negative emotions. The books were messed up. They're embarrassed. They can't sleep at night. They need to get their tax return done. You're saving them time because they don't have to spend hours trying to research this on their own on YouTube or asking friends. And, they're trying to do it themselves. And they're usually going to YouTube to try to figure it out, and they can't do it. And there is value also in giving them upfront pricing for your services because now they know exactly what they will need to pay you. There's a lot of value in just that, in just pricing that upfront. You're taking the risk, and there's value in that. So let's go through a method, one method in which you can price cleanups. One easy method, and I've learned to make pricing easy for myself because otherwise I will way overthink it. Okay. So, method one is based on the amount that you charge for monthly bookkeeping for that client. So, if you were doing their monthly bookkeeping, how much would you charge times the number of months? So, for example, let's say that you were going to charge $500 a month to do their bookkeeping times 12 months that you're cleaning up is $6,000. And some people mark that up, some people mark it down. So let's just say that we marked it down by 80%. We come up with $4,800. And the reason we're marking it down is just because some people think you're more efficient in doing a cleanup for a full year. Some people, like I said, they mark it up because they say cleanups are more complex. So whichever way you go, or even if, okay, I'm just going to say $6,000, that's fine. In this particular case, then what I would tell the client is the pricing will range from $4,800 to $5,500. So going back to what we said on the script is I recommend cleaning up and catching up your books from January to December 2022, as I mentioned in my report of findings. The pricing will range from, what did I say? $4,800 to $5,500. This is a much faster method of pricing, and it is the method that I'm using now. Second method is the estimated hours of how long you think it'll take to do the cleanup times an hourly rate. If you do that, make sure that you allow for administrative time and time for communication with the client because there's a lot of back and forth in requesting information from client as well as getting that information. So let's say, for example, that you thought it would take about 24 hours and you multiply that times your hourly rate. I'm just using $100 for the sake of this example. So that would be $2,400. And then you're going to do your markup for your administrative time. So that will be $2,880. And I'm just going to round it up. And so then I will tell the client the pricing will range from $2,900 to $3,500. So you want to leave yourself a cushion. Just as I said, sometimes you don't necessarily find everything and when you're doing the pay diagnostic review. And so it's just a way to give yourself a little cushion there. This method is dependent on your ability to estimate how long it will take to do the cleanup. And so that's why this is how I started initially to do it, just because I have an audit background. And so we were very big into budgeting hours for projects. So it was just something that was natural to me. But over time, what I found was that it was much easier for me just to come up with how much do I charge per month times the number of months that I'm cleaning up. Regardless of the method that you use for a cleanup, you want to get paid upfront. So I already talked about for the diagnostic review, you will get paid upfront. Okay. Actually, you will get paid upfront for every service that you provide. But for the diagnostic review, you want to collect the full amount of the diagnostic review. For a cleanup, um, then you want to take a deposit. So let's say a 50% deposit, you get paid up front, and then the balance near completion. Another option could be if perhaps you want to still try to charge by the hour until you develop more confidence in your pricing. Minimum number of hours times your hourly rate. So, for example, if you charge in 10-hour blocks, then you multiply that times your hourly rate. So let's say $100. So you're going to get $1,000 upfront, and then you just keep collecting $1,000 until you run out of time or complete the engagement. So we have talked about the 3 things that you need to do as a bookkeeper to review, report, and recommend. And what are the key takeaways that we need to now walk away with to implement in our own businesses? A pay diagnostic review helps you to qualify the client. It lowers the risk to the client, and it allows you to get a clear scope of work. And you position yourself as a specialist by diagnosing your client's books and recommending services. And as I said before, I did lots of free diagnostic reviews. I spent many hours, 5 to 8 hours sometimes, reviewing clients' books, only to find out they weren't interested in paying me to clean up the box. So I realized that, first of all, I have a skill set of being able to review their books. I have a skill set, a valuable skill set in telling them what's wrong with their books and knowing how to clean up the box. And I deserved to be compensated for that. And that's why I started doing the paid diagnostic reviews. But then as I started doing them, I realized that this was a complete game changer, because now I was working with a better quality of client. And because now I control the process, the client wasn't trying to tell me what to do. And that's when my confidence started to grow. And that's why we've done hundreds of cleanups, because of first doing this paid diagnostic review, working with the right clients, and developing enough skills and confidence to continue to do them. So I'd like to share a special discount with you. I do teach my paid diagnostic review system. So if you've as you're watching this webinar, or as you're attending this webinar, and you think, hey, I'd love to do this, I can do it on my own, great. But some of you may be saying, I'd love to do this, I just don't know how, or I don't have the time to implement this. So I do teach the paid diagnostic review, and it is an online course with lifetime access to all of the video lessons. And it will show you step by step. It will give you step-by-step instruction on how to do a paid diagnostic review, how to identify sources of problems and cleanup solutions, because sometimes we just don't know enough about QuickBooks, and why is there an unapplied cash payment income? Well, I will teach you why, and I will teach you all the source of problems and the cleanup solutions. I will show you how to prepare the report of findings and recommendations. and how to develop your diagnostic skills, because the key, I think, in doing the diagnostic and knowing how to clean up is the diagnostic skills that you need. It includes my full diagnostic review checklist that we use at Wasek at my company, a sample engagement letter for the diagnostic review, a sample of a completed diagnostic review checklist. And I do go step by step. There's a QuickBooks Online file that I completely messed up, and then I go through and diagnose every problem on that file. There's a sample report of findings and recommendations. It also includes a comprehensive QuickBooks Online diagnosis chart, which shows you, again, if you see undeposited funds, why is that there? How do you fix it? And it also includes a cleanup checklist. But the special discount that I'm sharing with you, starting today and through Tuesday, January 31st, you get a 12% discount on this course. So we have a coupon code for you guys to use, and I believe Jesse's sharing all of that with you. But because we have other cleanup courses, actually we have another cleanup course, I'm also extending that discount to my other cleanup courses. So we have the paid diagnostic review system that I just talked about. I also have a course showing you how to do the cleanup. Okay, so we have the diagnostic review course and the cleanup course. And if you would like, you can also purchase the 2-course bundle, which is the best price. We offer the courses either using a one-time payment. So if you pay one time, you get access to all of the course content, or you can pay installments. When you pay installments, you get the lessons delivered over the course of the installments. So for example, for the pay diagnostic review, if you have 4 payments, then you get the lessons over 4 months. All right. So we're going to go into Q&A and give you a second to switch back to that. And so just a second. Okay, so I'm sharing with you just the link if you'd like to just click and look at all of the cleanup courses, and then you have the discount code SAVE12C, and that's all lowercase. And I'm going to switch over to the Q&A, and then I'll share the Q&A screen so that we can all look at the questions. So give me one second, share screen. And okay, good. Sorry. I thought I would remember how to do this. Give me one second. Okay, here we go. And share screen. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so you should be seeing the Q&A tab. And I'm all the way to the top. Let's see. So we have a question from Maddie. When you don't know how to perform a bookkeeping task because you never did it before, do you charge for the time spent on researching and learning? For example, PayPal and Square and QBO. That's a great question. And the way that I position myself in our business is to really focus on working on things that are complex, like PayPal and Square. And we don't charge for that time unless the client comes to you and wants you to develop that expertise on their behalf, which they're not really volunteering that. I don't charge for that time. And I just use it to then find other clients, like other PayPal clients who need help, to then really get the benefit of the investment that I made of my time. Having said that, I've learned also to not take every client for every single problem, because there is that investment of time that my team and I have to make to work with clients on very specific problems. So then I usually always assess whether it makes sense. Like, is this something that I can take and use for other clients, or is this something that is so niche that maybe I do need to get paid just to research it. Heather says, how do you price a diagnostic for a catch up for a client that doesn't have any books and is 20 months behind? Okay. So you can't do a diagnostic review if they don't have books, but you can charge for what I would call a bookkeeping needs assessment. And so instead of diagnosing books that aren't there, you're charging to see what do they have, so that basically, what do you have and what do we need to put together your bookkeeping? And I would charge for that. Natalie asks, how do you measure the time it will take to clean up to give to the client? So I don't ever share with a client how long something will take. I'm only sharing with them what the pricing will be, or the price range will be. But I don't tell them how long it will take. Now, in terms of how do I know how long it'll okay, and perhaps, Natalie, I misunderstand your question. So let me reread. How do you measure the time it will take to clean up to give to the client? Okay, so if you're saying, like, how do I know what is the completion date of a cleanup project? Then yes, I do share that with the client, and typically we do 6 weeks. And the reason we do that is just because we have other clients, we have monthly clients that we're working on in other projects, and so we've just learned from experience that that our team can work on their monthly clients as well as cleanups in a period of 6 weeks. If the client is in a rush, then we do 4 weeks and we charge more. But we've learned, at least for our team, is 6 weeks. And most clients don't complain. Now, you do have some clients that want their books like tomorrow, and there's no way we can do that. Danielle is asking, how do you recommend getting a tax return for a single member LLC that files as a sole proprietor? You can and you wouldn't, because you want the balance sheet, and there is no balance sheet in a sole proprietor tax return. At least in the US, there is not. And that's why I mentioned you only request the tax return for S Corp, C Corp, and partnership. Elizabeth is asking, do you have any templates for the service agreement on cleanups and the diagnostic review? Yes, but they're included in the diagnostic review course and in the cleanup course. Dan says, silly question, what's the difference between cleanup and catch up? That's a great question, and most cleanup projects involve both. So a cleanup is the client attempted to do something, or maybe one of their employees or another bookkeeper attempted to do the books and they're messed up. And a catch up is, okay, we're going to get your books up to date. So we typically, what we see is that clients will realize that their books are messed up and they stop. So let's say that they figured out 3 months ago that their books are messed up, so they just stop touching the books. And so then by the time they come to you, we have a cleanup situation, and then we have a catch-up situation as well. Andrew says, with a seriously messed up set of books, at what point would you advise to set up a completely new QBO account, or is it even advisable? It depends on the clients. Many of the cleanup clients that we used to work on, we did not start their books fresh, primarily because they were service-based businesses and they have a lot of history, vendor history, customer history, that it really didn't make sense to start a new set of books. And as you know, with QuickBooks, that you have to now have a plan for what do you do with the historical file, because at some point you'll stop paying for that QBO file, and after a year that information goes away, but you still need it just for historical purposes. And so we would just clean up the box. with some of the e-commerce clients that we work with, a lot of them are starting a fresh set of books, and or rather they're brand new businesses, so they start their books, they mess them up real quick. And so rather than try to clean something up just because they have less than a year of activity on their books and it's unusable information, we scrap that file and we start a new file. You really have to consider that on a client by client basis. And um, many clients want you to start fresh, but a lot of it just depends on what's important from a historical perspective, and then what's the plan for what you're going to do with the previous file. Maddie says, if you have to go to the office to work on QuickBooks Desktop, do you charge extra for the trip? I used to when we did that, but we haven't done that since like 2015, I think. And simply because we focused on QuickBooks Online. Maddie is asking, when you give a price range to a client and they ask how many hours I'm going to spend on the work, what do you say? It's irrelevant. So again, if you're really positioning yourself as a specialist and positioning yourself as I'm not your employee, it's irrelevant how many hours it will take. Do you ask your doctor how long it will take to do your surgery? Maybe from just because you're curious, but not because it affects how much your doctor is going to charge you. And so I would probably just say that, you know, that, well, I had something in my head, now it went away. That, that probably shouldn't be concerned about the number of hours. We want to, as a professional, I'd rather focus on a desired outcome and focusing on my findings and recommendations and not on how long it will take. And ultimately my pricing is based on this desired outcome, and you don't focus on hours. I mean, we just said we don't do pricing by the hour and don't track projects that way. Denise is saying or asking, if your client has more than a year of unreconciled bank accounts, can you start at a particular point, like the beginning of the new year, and not go back to reconcile all of the prior months? Yes and no. Okay, so you have to reconcile from the last point that the books were reconciled. Reconciliations you don't get to skip something. The reason is that the balances on your bank accounts and the balance sheet accounts are all historical. They start from day one and they're cumulative. So we can't just pick and choose that we're going to do these months and not these others. But there are ways, and I do teach this in my cleanup course, to do what I call a catch-up reconciliation, in which you are then going to catch up that reconciliation from the last time it was done to the end of the prior period that you're reconciling. There are some considerations, however, in doing that, depending on the tax entity, depending on reconciling the books to the last tax return. There are several caveats that you need to be aware of, and I teach all of that in my complete QBO cleanup system. Barry is asking, what is your opinion of offering a refund, a portion of the diagnostic review if the prospect decides to go ahead with the cleanup? So I wouldn't call it a refund. I would call it a credit. And some of my students do that. I don't, but I think that if it helps you to sell the project, then yes, I might give them like half of what they paid for the diagnostic review and offer to credit it. So do not call it a refund, because a refund implies that they're unhappy with something. It's a credit that you apply to their cleanup. Emma is asking, can you please explain the reasoning for getting all those documents up front? Because you'll need them to do the pay diagnostic review. And in the QBO pay diagnostic review course, and I show you step by step, and then you'll understand why I request those things up front, but they are part of doing the pay diagnostic review. Evelyn says, hi, Veronica. Happy 2023. Hello. It's great to be here again. This is my second time on your webinar. I absolutely love it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge. My question is not really related to cleanup, but could you please share with us which system you use to share documentation with your clients? Do you have any videos on YouTube? Thanks in advance. So you're talking, if you're referring to getting documents from clients or having them upload documents, we're doing two things. One, we use Box for document management. So all of our documents end up being stored in Box. But we are using the Keeper app to request documents from clients, so that we can request them from clients, they can upload them to Keeper, and then we move them out of Keeper into Box. If you look at or do a demo of Keeper.app, make sure to let them know that I sent you, and they will give you a discount. And Jesse, if you want to put that that hyperlink for them for Keeper.app, or if you have our affiliate link, you can share that in the comments. Let's see. Jennifer, do you have a lot of industry-specific problems in cleanups? I would say now, yes, much more so now than in the past. And the reason is because there's e-commerce is now touching everything. So PayPal, Stripe, Square, Shopify, you have so many Venmo, Zelle, like all of these methods of sending money to people, paying people, and it's done through e-commerce or money payment processors. That all of that adds complexity. And what I have found is that if you specialize, say, if you specialize in PayPal or specialize in Stripe, that then your skill set will be much more valuable to that specific industry, because other people are probably staying away from those. Christine says, during a cleanup, what do you suggest doing when the client doesn't continue providing you with the information you need, so you can't finish? At what point do you send the final invoice for the remaining balance? Okay, and this is why it's so important to get paid in advance, because at the very least, you're getting 50% upfront. And but we have now added wording in our engagement letters to say to clients, especially for these projects, that they have a 3-week window basically from the time we request things. If they ghost us for 3 weeks, we will give them 1 more week, we'll give them a warning. And then if we don't hear from them, we terminate the agreement. And so that releases us from having to complete the project. And then in your case, that you would have to invoice for the remaining balance. I don't know if they'll pay you, unfortunately, but at the very least, you're getting you're able to walk away from that project. And we learned this the hard way. We had a client that I think it took them 2 years to give us everything we needed for a cleanup, and that's when we just said no more. This was several years ago. Flora says, I have a client that is not responding to my request. Also, his bank account was messed up, and I get the red circle with an exclamation mark in it. I have asked him to change his password with his bank account, as I think I could not upload his transactions anymore. Is this a huge problem? Well, this is the problem that we all have in the bookkeeping industry, is clients being unresponsive to our requests. And so, as I said, if it's a cleanup project, we now have wording to basically get out of the engagement. If it's a monthly client, we then have wording on the engagement letter to let them know that we charge on a subscription basis. So if we don't get everything we need from them, we're under no obligation to give them money back if we choose to release them. But in terms of if you can't get the bank statements, the client has to get that from you. Or if you can't connect the bank feeds to the bank account and you're having issues, you might have to then go directly to the bank account to get an export file and then import it into QuickBooks. And let's see. All right, I'm going to answer questions for about 10 more minutes. So I always try my best to answer all your questions. I see we have a few, but I will try. Okay. But if you need to leave or anything, or you're wondering how long I will go, about 10 minutes. Okay. Starling says, I love Keeper and use it, but when I'm doing a cleanup with hundreds of transactions that need to be addressed, I have been unwilling to ask through Keeper since I don't want to overwhelm the client with that many questions. If I can, I'll get the client to meet with me on Zoom for 2 hours and go through a bunch at once. Should I not worry about too many questions in Keeper? I actually like what you're doing, Starling, to get the client on a call because it would just be too overwhelming for them. When they see that many questions, they'll just get overwhelmed. I know that I would. And so it's probably better, especially with a business owner, when you're competing for their attention, just to get their full attention on a call. Carol says, how do you price it without seeing revenue? So we're talking about the diagnostic review. I ask in advance. So when clients book a discovery, or prospective clients book a discovery call with me, there's an intake form that asks what the revenues are, and it's a range that they can choose from. So I don't worry too much on the exact amount of the revenues, but that's how I get the revenues. And usually clients know, even if they don't have books, even if their books are messed up, they know what their revenues are. Maddie's asking, how do you have comprehensive classes and support? Oh, no. Do you have comprehensive classes and support on PayPal and Square transactions? I don't have anything on Square. For PayPal, I do have a workflow that I teach for Shopify. So if you have a Shopify client who's using PayPal, then I teach that in my Shopify bookkeeping method course. But I don't have a course on PayPal generically, just because there are so many iterations of how you can use PayPal for a specific industry. If you wanted to do some coaching with us, however, this is my unofficial announcement that we will be offering one-to-one coaching to bookkeepers to tackle some of these issues, and we can probably help you with PayPal. So look for my announcement. It'll likely be next month when I will kick this off. Peggy is asking, what if the client has 12 bank accounts? I got a ministry with 5 church bank accounts and 7 missionary bank accounts, lots of transfers that now have to be changed from transfer to expenses and deposits. So and from the standpoint of a cleanup, then you do have to price accordingly, because that is a lot of work. I'm not sure if you're asking me from the standpoint of a diagnostic review, that if they're really, you can charge whatever you want for a diagnostic review. So if it sounds like it's going to be much more complex, charge more money for it. I hope I'm answering your question, Peggy. If not, let me know if you have a more specific question about that. Sunita is asking, I have already purchased it a year ago, so that will that be updated to what you are offering now? If you're talking about the cleanup courses, the courses are still the same. It's because the workflow has not changed. So whatever courses you have, that you're good to go, Sunita. Callie says, do you have a template for a diagnostic review agreement? And I said, yes, that is included in my diagnostic, or rather my QBO diagnostic review system. And Sunita says, can we use the templates provided in the course? How can we edit them? Yes, you can use them. They are editable either in Excel or Word. Maddie says, if the client doesn't use QB at all and their accounting software you don't know how to use, what do you do? I only specialize in QuickBooks for the sole purpose of, and I knew this from the beginning, I will specialize in one software because I want to be the very best at it. And that has served me very well. And so unless you think you can get other clients in this other software, I would stay away from it, just because that's a lot of time and effort to go into, especially a cleanup situation when you don't know the software. Dawn is asking, do you have your clients send you a 1099 even for your diagnostic? Well, it's not up to me to tell my clients whether they need to send me a 1099. However, we are taxed as an S Corp, so we don't receive a 1099 in my accounting firm. But you might want to review the rules for 1099s, and I have resources on that in Facebook. Well, my Facebook group and my YouTube channel. Monica is asking, are the review and cleanup checklists you offer included in the courses? So the cleanup checklist is available if you wanted to only buy the cleanup checklist. It is the same checklist that is included in my courses, in the cleanup courses. All right. I think I made it. All right. Fantastic. So thank you so much for joining me, guys. And I look forward to seeing you next month. So next month, I'll be continuing this conversation, and we're going to talk more about cleanups and really then if we have a cleanup client, what do we do next? So that'll be our next webinar for next month. So look for those emails so you can register for next month. Thank you again for joining me. I really appreciate it, and we'll see you next time. Bye.